Well, this one should be a doozy.
Welcome to Crocs in the Kitchen.
I'm Jessica.
And I am Brian. Yes, we are starting out with this one with an update on baby number 2.
Yes. So if you remember, Tess, my cousin, and I did a video a few weeks back, and we kind of left it on a little bit of a cliffhanger that Tess was still undergoing some medical testing to potentially be our gestational carrier once again. And we had that appointment last Monday. It was a saline ultrasound, and they actually, what they saw in there, they did end up clearing Tess to continue forward with this process.
Yes.
Now, we know this is going to cause a lot of controversy because the last video we did, you guys had a lot of questions about the safety of this, about, Tess doing it, us asking Tess to do it, us not telling Tess that she couldn't do it, a lot of stuff about, well, you guys have cancer, why are you guys even pursuing having another child? All kinds of things were stirred up in the comments.
Yep.
And we went through those comments for hours and hours and sort of came up with an outline for this video to respond to. There's a few different concerns and buckets that we really wanted to address. So we're not going to talk a lot about this video about what is actually happening with baby number 2 and the process with Tess, as we are still continuing that. And we'll go into that in another video, that whole process and what that timeline is going to look like and all of that. But we did want to address these things, especially since we are going to be continuing with this process with her. And that doesn't mean we're going to end up with a baby, but we are going to be continuing through a lot more with her. And I think it would be nice to share more of that this time around. Last time we didn't really share a whole lot about that process. And I think I would like to just keep that a little bit more updated this time and share more of Tess, really, because she's just an amazing person. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So let's start. I got my stuff all organized here. Okay. The first thing that I want to talk about that I think is really important is that we know everyone is allowed, and we've talked about this before, everyone's allowed to have their own opinion. We're bringing up a very private matter and decisions that are usually made very privately and bringing it to this public forum.
Yeah.
So in doing so, we know that we're going to get people who disagree with us. We're going to get all kinds of comments, and that's fine.
Yep. We expect it. We encourage it.
Yeah, we expect it. We don't expect everyone to agree with our decisions. We don't expect everyone to be happy with our decisions.
Yeah. We never want to live in an echo chamber.
But I think that, and this was a comment that came up on the last video. Somebody said, that's what you get when you choose to put a very private matter on the internet. They should know that there will be differences of opinion, which is absolutely normal and fine. Don't post anything online if you want everyone to be in agreement. That's just ignorant. Totally agree with that comment.
Yep.
That's
100%.
A very good assessment of the situation. I think that people who share their lives in these formats, know that and come to expect that, but it doesn't mean that that is for everybody. And there are a lot of days where I question if I want to be sharing this stuff.
Yeah.
But ultimately, what I've learned from sharing is that it benefits people to talk about these topics that people just don't talk a lot about.
Yeah.
And it just starts conversation, starts balls rolling,
yeah.
And I like that.
And we absolutely, we expect criticism. In fact, we kind of encourage that too, because we don't want to, as long as everybody's not mean about it, there's a possibility that we can learn from that critique.
Yeah.
I've always welcomed critique in my life, in whatever the field happened to be in. This is no different. So if you do have a concern, if you do have something that you want to voice, you can comment down below. You can send a message on Facebook or Instagram or any of that kind of stuff. We will gladly answer questions if we can.
Yeah. That being said, I think that what's really hard for us, it is still hard for us not to go into defense mode when somebody is commenting a differing opinion in the comments. It's really hard to be like, oh wait, we did invite and welcome this. It's hard not to become defensive sometimes. And it's hard because we have this desire to be able to give you guys all the backstory and explain all the context. because sometimes there are comments that just are incorrect, assumptions about our lives that are not correct. And we want to be able to tell you all that stuff. It's almost like watching sometimes you guys trying to put together a puzzle, but you're missing half of the pieces. And the unfortunate part is like, we can't
always give you the pieces, in this format.
Yeah. And so, if you ever want to have like a private conversation, I'm the one that monitors the Instagram. Brian is on the Facebook. We always welcome that as well. I may not have time to respond to all the things on Instagram sometimes. I try to, but it definitely is hard being on this side and not being able to explain all the gaps that you guys are like having, and you're not seeing the full picture sometimes.
Yep.
So hopefully this video can help fill in some of those gaps, just a little bit.
But if they don't, like we said, message us. We'll gladly fill in whatever gaps that we can.
Yes. There were kind of two, I would say, big overarching concerns about us pursuing having another child. One of them, the first one, and the one that is most important to me, is Tess and her health. And why would she do this again? Why would we ask her to do this again? And all of those questions.
Yep.
So I guess where we can start is a few comments that we got on why would we ask her. People said maybe asking Tess to do it again is not such a good ask. They said, why would you bring it up? Why bring up another baby so soon after Elsie and risk your cousin's life? Do you want to take that one?
So we didn't ask Tess. We have never asked Tess. We didn't ask Tess to carry Elsie for us. We didn't ask her about the second one. And I mean, you guys, I don't fully recall what you said in the previous video, but we worked under the assumption with the second child that we weren't going to use Tess as our gestational carrier.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we never asked her to do this.
Yeah, it wasn't like, so I will say like halfway through the first pregnancy, she already came to me and was like, okay, so this is our timeline for the next one. And I kind of said to her, wait a minute, like, let's get through this first one and see what happens first before we like start, doing all that.
She was already planning like well ahead.
Yeah.
Like I swear she has a plan for our kids to go to college already.
That's just her. She's a planner. She likes to know what the timeline for things is going to be. And once she sets her mind to something, I feel like she's just like gonna make it happen and she's gonna achieve it. And I will say that in the months following her giving birth to Elsie, I didn't feel like it was a safe place for anybody to be making a decision. Emotions are high. Her hormones are all over the place.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like that was a great time for her to be making decisions. So we just sort of like went for a few months. And then when Brian and I realized if we wanted to pursue having another child, it may seem very quick after Elsie, but Elsie will be 2 when our next child is born, most likely. Yeah. Unless like something crazy happens, but she will be no less than 2 years old, most likely. And that's, a pretty normal gap between children. But also
how much older my brother is from me.
But also, the process of doing a surrogacy, like setting up all the stuff, is a very long process. So you have to start thinking about it months and months in advance of when you're actually going to do the transfer. There are like, even the legal process itself can take like 4 to 6 weeks just to get that part of it done. There are, multiple different kinds of health evaluations, meetings with doctors. There's so much to this process that it is not something where you can just decide one day, oh yeah, we have an embryo, we want to do the transfer, let's do it tomorrow. It is a very
months-long process, and we are still in that process.
Yeah.
And there is no guarantee that any kind of a transfer could happen, even in the next couple of months, let alone in the next several months.
Yeah. And so if we doing it with Tess is one thing, but we actually started down the route of considering a surrogate, like an outside gestational carrier that was not Tess. And that process would take even longer because the legal contracts and setting it up with Tess is like it's a very easy, basic. It's easy, and it's a very much easier contract because we're very in agreement on everything. But you could get into months of going back and forth with a gestational carrier, depending on like different negotiations and that kind of stuff. So it is a very long process. I think that, you know, you could start as early as like a year out with trying to figure all that out. And so that's kind of why things came up sooner. And it was me pursuing like, okay, well, if Tess is not the option, then let's pursue what our other option is. Let's find out so we can figure out how we were going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And in that process, then Tess came back to us and was like, wait, I want to do it again. And then that kind of opened a whole nother...
It wasn't even that she said she wanted to do it again. She wanted to find out if she could do it again.
Yes.
And we were like, you're probably not going to get cleared. It's like, but if you really want to pursue this, like,
and that
we'll do what we can to facilitate you finding out the information that you want.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to the next part of this. It's like some comments that we got about why don't we just tell her no and not allow her to do it? Okay, well, it's our embryo. We could just be like, sorry, Tess, we love you and we appreciate you, but we can't let you do this. And, you know, some of the comments were like, why not let her off the hook and focus on yourselves? Tess has given you the biggest gift a person can give. It didn't come without risk or a personal price. Let her be and move on. She is too selfless to say no, but do something for her and free her.
Actually, when I read that comment, I messaged Tess and I said, you're free, go home.
Well, I think my thought process of going through the medical testing and talking to doctors and pursuing to see if it really was possible for Tess to do this again and not super, you know, risky to her health. It was about freeing her. It was freeing her from this turmoil in herself, not knowing if she could do it again. I don't think someone can truly make a decision if they don't have all the information. And so part of this was to give her a little bit of, you know, easing her mind and being like, okay, do I even have the choice to do this again? Or is this just a no, I can't do it again? And for her, knowing that and finding more information out was very important. I actually had a really funny conversation with Tess, since we're such giddy schoolgirls. That's what people called us in the comment. They said we were like giddy high school girls or something.
I mean, whatever. Sometimes you are, but
I mean, we are. We have this energy around each other that is like nothing else in our lives. And it is something that gives us such great joy to be together and to laugh. Tess told me she the other day she realized she laughs the most when she's around me. Like when we get together, it's just like, there's like this comfort and this energy and this just, yeah, it is. We grew up together. So like it is a lot of our childhood coming out. I feel like that not everyone can handle. Brian and Jeff, when they're in the room with us and we're at our top level of energy, like they can't handle us. I'm just saying.
Their connection is so deep and so rooted that it's wild, actually. I don't think I've ever come across any sort of familial connection that is deeper than what Jessica and Tess have. It's just, it is a love beyond relationship. It is a love beyond family. It is just this, like she said, this energy that they have. They are connected, almost like they're soulmates, but they're not. So I'm her soulmate.
But I asked Tess, literally, I said, there are people telling me that I should just say no to you. Like, should I just be saying no to you? And she said that if I said no to her, she would try to break into the fertility clinic and steal our embryos and implant them in her. That's how, like, I'm just telling you, like, it's not lost on me that this process does put her at risk. Any pregnancy puts somebody at risk. It's not lost on me that last time what we went through, it was so scary. It was terrifying for all of us. But I have thought, like, is this just me not wanting to tell her no? Is this just me wanting to give her, like, let her fulfill a dream that she has inside of her, driving her? And in not saying no to her, am I putting her at risk? But when we talk about the next part, I'm telling you, like, we have evaluated up and down the ladder with doctors. We've had, some people have said, you should get a second opinion. We've had a second opinion. We have a third opinion. And Tess's husband, Jeff, is like the biggest protector of her. And he has been very involved in this process as well. We knew in, starting down the road of this whole baby number 2 process that Jeff was going to be like the most difficult person to convince that this would be something she should do. But it knowing that Jeff has her back so much and is such a big advocate for her made me comforted in the decisions that we're coming to, because I know Jeff, he's a very practical, like, how would you describe his, like...
You should have seen the number of questions that he had for the high-risk OBGYN when we went and visited that doctor. It was literally broken down into every conceivable outcome that could possibly happen. He wanted to know not only the risk of the pregnancy, the future risk of her health, the risk of like anything and everything that could possibly happen. And it was impressive to actually see. It almost made me feel a little bit like, man, I don't think I go to that level, like of trying to protect Jessica.
Hey.
Like, but it's like, I mean, trust me, Jeff was definitely the hardest to convince. And it was only because of the sheer number of tests and doctor's appointments and everything else that finally sort of like got him to the point where he was like, okay, maybe this can be done.
Yeah. And in evaluating the risk based on real, like, studies, numbers, like statistics, all that kind of stuff really kind of helped us all bring it into perspective. I think that, let's see.
We call him the safety officer for a reason.
Oh, yeah. We do call him the safety officer. Like, he is Mr. Like, everything has to be up to par when it comes to any kind of safety.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah. But here's a few comments that people had made about, in regard to the evaluation of health risks to Tess. Somebody said they seem to be more concerned whether or not the implant would be successful in regards to scar tissue in her uterus than on any risk to Tess. I think that a second opinion on Tess's health is more than warranted. And like I said, we have had multiple opinions, and I want to be clear that when that doctor came to me and said that she didn't think it was necessarily going to work, like after that last ultrasound or the hysteroscopy that we did, when the fertility doctor came out and talked to me, my first question was, my statement to her was, I know that there's probably, depending on how this plays out, there could be changes in the success of the transplant itself, of the implant, of the embryo taking hold in her uterus. But my number one concern is, what additional risk does the scar tissue and everything that you're telling me, what additional risk does that put on Tess and her future and her health? And will this pregnancy be more risky because of that? And we were actually able to get some answers, and the last saline ultrasound showed some things that weren't worst case. It wasn't the worst case scenario that the doctor thought it was going to be. It was definitely not, as it could have gone one way and it didn't go that way. So, but I assure you that we knew that there were two sides. There's always two sides to this. There's risk to the baby, the embryo and the baby. There's risk to Tess. And the risk to Tess is always going to be our number one priority. No matter what, if there's decisions that need to be made throughout it, it's always going to be Tess. So at the end of it, we were discussing, the scar tissue could cause the embryo to attach to a place in her uterus that would cause it to be a more high-risk pregnancy. And so that's why we were asking so many questions. But I feel like we all have gotten to a point where we've realized that things weren't quite as bad as what we were expecting to see in there. And that's why ultimately we're feeling comfortable moving on. And we can talk about that in future videos as well.
Yes.
Somebody did say that they went back and watched the video that we made with Tess shortly after Elsie was born. And this was a really good point. They said that Tess had said that she had met with her doctor, and her doctor told her that it would be dangerous for her to try to ever have another baby. And we wanted to make a distinction. That was actually the midwife who delivered Elsie. It was a midwife at Tess's OBGYN who delivered Elsie. And so the midwife told her that. I think in the video we said it was a doctor that said that.
Yeah, we thought it was a doctor.
And we thought it was a doctor, not shaming on midwives or anything like that. Honestly, we just didn't know, and maybe that's on us last time that we didn't
yeah.
I sort of let Tess figure out, with her OB, I was like, whatever you want to do, whatever you feel comfortable with. And one thing that's very distinctive this time around is that they told us definitely don't deliver with a midwife.
Yep.
That's not what we should be doing for this pregnancy. So again, it was the midwife that said those comments. It was not a doctor who was basing them on, actually going in there and looking at her uterus and seeing what was going on and all that kind of stuff.
But it was the midwife though whose information that we were basing every other decision that we were going on after that.
Yeah.
And so when we actually met with the fertility doctors, when we were talking about the possibility of starting the process for baby number 2 again, even she was like, well, it's what happened to Tess wouldn't disqualify her. And we were like, wait, what? No, because the other person said that she wouldn't be allowed to do this. And it was then okay, no, that's not actually the case. That was a midwife, and they're like, well, we'll have Tess get checked out by high risk OBGYN. We'll have other tests. We'll do all of this stuff, and bing, bang, boom, and now here we are down in that process.
Yeah. Somebody also commented, "Where are the grown-ups? I would have hoped the doctors you consulted with would advise you against this." There hasn't been anybody along the way that has said, no, this is a bad idea, you shouldn't do this. And I do appreciate that a lot of people will say, well, doctors don't necessarily have your best interest at heart. But the fertility doctor that we have, I do really believe she knows she's been with us this whole time. Yep. And I do believe that she knows what's on our minds, what's on our hearts, and regarding this. And I don't believe that she would suggest that we do this if she really felt like it was a bad risk for Tess.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are a few questions people asked about Tess. Does she have kids of her own? Yes, she has one child that she gave birth to who is about to turn 15. What? And then she has 2 stepchildren as well one is older and one's a little bit younger than her daughter. So, yes, she does have kids of her own. Does she want kids of her own? She absolutely does not want any more children of her own.
None.
She actually had a nightmare while she was pregnant with Elsie that it was her own child that she was pregnant with, and she was like, oh, no.
She doesn't want our children either. She does not want to raise our children at all.
Somebody asked, is Tess the only surrogate option? No, there certainly are more options that we can look at, and we certainly will, and we have. Yep. We've actually connected with a handful of people already about it. And so, we do have other options, but how does Jeff feel about the second go around? I think we should have Jeff answer that on his own terms whenever in a future video.
Yeah, because for him, it's definitely a bit of a longer story, and I don't want to speak necessarily for him.
Yeah.
But we did kind of already talk about his mindset and everything. But trust me, his video will be a lot more informative than what we could say for him.
Yeah, I will. The one thing I will say is that he's her biggest advocate, and he will always advocate for what is good for her and what is healthy for her. But he also is her biggest supporter of her dreams and her ambitions. And a balance between that combined with somebody who is extremely reasonable, extremely well educated, and it gives me comfort having him involved in this process.
Yeah. Jeff is someone whose opinion I highly value.
Yes.
I mean, highly value, even more so than friends that I've known for 30 years.
Yeah. There was another comment that a few people kind of alluded to this. But this one kind of hurt me. It said, seriously, it sounds like she sacrificed her uterus to give her cousin a child that doesn't seem to be appreciated or acknowledged. And I mean, of course we appreciate Tess. Like there's nothing we can say or do that even begins to chip away at how appreciative we are of Tess.
I tell her all the time that I cannot repay her for what she's done. I can't. I could try. If I lived 1,000 years, I still couldn't pay her back for what she's given us. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
Like, we appreciate and love her immensely for what she did and giving us our beautiful Elsie. I mean, anybody who thinks that we aren't appreciative of that fact can take a long walk off a short plank.
But and as far as her sacrificing her uterus, one of the things that is really important when, you know, using a surrogate, and a lot of I think like a lot of the fertility clinics require, is that somebody who is pursuing that, you know, being a gestational carrier, surrogate, whatever, is done having their own children, because there are things that could happen that could lead them to not be able to have more children.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, this whole process, everyone who said, if this was a woman just wanting to have her own baby, no one would have questioned any of this stuff. Like,
Yep.
They would have said, oh yeah, you can still try. And that kind of puts another into perspective as well on the risks. But yeah, it is, she, you know, Tess's story is actually kind of amazing, because she was considering having a uterine ablation years ago, and then decided not to, because she kind of felt like, hey, I have these parts that work. Maybe I could help somebody else who isn't able to have children. And then that ended up being me and Brian, and it was like a whole thing. But anyway, so I think we've talked enough about Tess.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure I know that there's a million more things we could say without you guys being 100% like in our lives every day and understanding everything. Like, I know there's people out there that just aren't going to understand this decision. I know there's people out there who are really worried about Tess, who just don't want us to put her at risk. And I totally appreciate that. And I know she appreciates that as well. It's just something that we're all going to have to agree to disagree on at the end of the day, because there's nothing we can say that could convince everybody out there that this is the right path to choose.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. That leads us into the second one, which is us and our health and our issues, and why on earth would we bring another child into the mix given our predicaments?
Yes.
So here's a couple of comments I'll read, and then Brian,
go for
if
it.
you want to go ahead and respond. The Crocs choosing to have a second child with the big medical risks they both have is so upsetting that I can't follow them anymore. And another person said, both Brian and Jessica have had cancer and their future is yet unknown. I'd be thankful for what you have now.
Everyone's future is unknown.
Yes.
No one is guaranteed anything. I've talked about this on in some comments and some messages and stuff. Like, I know people that passed away in their sleep and left young children like around, like, and they were perfectly healthy individuals. We are not guaranteed anything in our lives. We do not know our futures, and the best that we can do is plan for possible eventualities where either one of us does not survive, both of us do not survive, you know, and everything in between all of those decisions.
Yeah. And trust us, we have those conversations all the time.
All the time.
Before we even started on the process with Elsie, and a lot of people were like, wow, that was really fast after I had my surgery and all that stuff. We did that embryo transfer 2 weeks after I had my really big surgery. And it, you know, people were kind of shocked that we had moved so quickly. But we had had so many conversations basically saying, like, if I were to die and not survive the cancer, would Brian, given that we had these 3 embryos, would Brian still try to pursue, making those embryos, like giving them a chance to become children? And he said that he would, that he definitely would want to, like, even if I was gone, he would definitely want to. And so that was a consideration that we had. It was something that gave me peace, knowing that he would have some piece of me and a reason to carry on and keep doing his thing and not totally just like fall apart and become a depressed blob of nothingness.
Yeah, that was the darkest timeline.
So we have gone through all these different things and situations and all that. The one thing I will say is, my life does not stop because cancer decided to invade my body.
Yep.
Brian's life does not stop because cancer decided to invade his body.
Yeah, I'm not going to live my life just waiting around to die. It's just not going to happen.
We could sit around and say, you know what, let's just cool it for the next 5 years and see where we're at and reevaluate it. We're not getting any younger. I'm 39. He's 42. We're not like, super young parents here. But I sit and question all of the decisions. Like, we've been married for 13 years? Is that where we're at now? Yeah, 13 years and plus. And I have sat around and said, well, what if we tried for children at this point in our lives? Or what if we tried at that? What if I'd been in a better place mentally to, want to try for children back at this age versus that? But the fact of it is, we can't change any of that. We can change what's going forward. And Elsie has been the biggest blessing to our lives, has given us so much joy, so much reason to want to fight to see another day. And it's just, I refuse to put our lives on hold for that.
But I also wanted to say that one of the only reasons why I was even comfortable going through with the process to get Elsie and any other possible children is that we are surrounded by people that love us, that I completely trust in the possibility, if God forbid both of us pass away, there are people that I completely trust to raise our children and take care of them.
Yeah.
And those 2 people are not actually Tess and
That
Jeff.
leads me to the next comment somebody said. Somebody said, has Tess agreed to raise these children as her own should anything happen to you or Brian, and maybe vice versa as well?
No. She doesn't want our kids to raise. She is happy not raising our children.
Elsie.
She loves Elsie and I mean, she adores her, but she does not want to raise her. She wants to be the cool aunt, and that is that.
But it's interesting because actually part of the process of the legal part of a gestational carrier contract is you do have to put in there, and it has to be someone who's not the carrier. You do have to like have a will that says, hey, this is the person that would take care of this child if something were to happen, because what if both of us got struck by a bus and died while Tess was pregnant? Then what happens to the baby? Like, legally in the contract, you have to have that stuff kind of figured out. And we did come up with a plan in place for what would happen to Elsie. And we feel very comfortable with that. And it is not Tess taking her. That being said, if there was some kind of crazy emergency dire situation where the only person who could take her was Tess, I'm sure Tess would take her in a heartbeat.
Yes.
But that is not and has never been the plan to put that, back on them. No. We have other people in our lives that, we feel very comfortable with, that will provide a loving family for them should anything happen to either of us. And you know what? Everybody should have a plan for that, because everyone should, because again, there's so many people who are commenting about like our lives being so uncertain, our futures being so uncertain. Everyone's future is uncertain. I can't explain this to you anymore. Like, nobody's guaranteed anything.
Yeah. I've said it I think on the live stream with Chef AJ, control is an illusion.
Okay, so this was interesting, and this is something we've definitely thought about. Somebody asked, would any of your offspring carry a higher chance of cancer that you had that you would pass on? And we both went through genetic testing at Mayo Clinic. Very not just base level. We went through a lot of extensive genetic testing. Yes. We talked with them about specifically this. We'd already had Elsie before we realized that Brian had cancer. But even given my cancer, we had talked to so many people about is this safe to do? Is this not? Neither of our cancers has shown any genetic link that they could find. That then they have I don't know, it's a whole other level.
Yeah. There's a whole thing with the testing that they do, and then you also have to follow up with a geneticist. Now, that being said, when Elsie turns 18, we can have her tested for a genetic component, because they're always learning new things, and there's always something more that they could find in the future that could, be a genetic component for cancer. And so when she gets older, we will have her tested at some point, and then go from there. But right now, according to all the science that we have, no, we are not passing on anything that we know of.
Yeah.
Other than probably our craziness.
Okay, here's another comment that I'll read. Another child is not going to fulfill and make your life better. If you're going to therapy, any psychologist would look at the situation and tell you the same. If they are encouraging you to have another child and to keep going the way you are, that's not the answer, and it's not right. You have a lot to work on. That's just my personal opinion.
We do have a lot to work on.
We do have a lot to work on. And I think that some of the comments on this particular video, the baby number 2 video that I did with Tess, came from a place of, you just saw us have these really difficult, hard-hitting conversations with each other about our weight and our health and our motivation and all of that. And I think that what I will say is, putting those conversations out there and having those conversations are us moving toward fixing things, and not just burying them and just continuing to do the same.
We are not oblivious to the problems that we have.
Yeah, we are working on ourselves. We are always working on ourselves and getting ourselves to a better place. That being said, we are not, nor is anybody, unless, I don't know, maybe there's somebody out there, going to be perfect when we knew we weren't going to be perfect when Elsie arrived. When another child arrives, if we are blessed to have another child, we're not going to be perfect, but we're going to try to be better than we are today.
Yep.
And I won't say I don't regret it, because I feel like everything happens for a reason, and everything, happens in the way it's meant to happen. But there are definitely barriers that I let myself have throughout my younger years, that I told myself that I wasn't ready for children because of X, Y, Z, this, that, or the other, whether it be something financial or something, my mental health was a big component of it, which I am really glad I got that under control before we had a child.
Me too.
And before I got cancer. But it's just, there's never going to be a right moment. And that's what any parent, I think, would tell you, is there's never going to be the perfect moment of, oh my gosh, this is the perfect moment, we should have children right now. It's just never going to happen. And so for us, we have challenges that maybe we've shared more publicly and talked about a little bit more than most people, the average people do. Yeah. But everyone has those, and they still have children. Yep. And it works out.
Yep.
I love this comment.
This is the best comment that we got. So it brought me so much laughter.
Oh. I never liked Jessica from the beginning. I think she's a user, and Brian is a saint putting up with her. But nonetheless, Jessica is going to push, and get that woman to carry her child. And on a different vein, I think their marriage is troubled. If you watch the video from earlier this week or last week, where they're actually arguing about his weight loss and how he doesn't follow the program, I hope that they do not pass psychological evaluations for IVF and go any further. Their marriage seems to be on a rocky road, and I don't mean ice cream. So, There's a lot to unpack there.
It's so good.
I mean,
you're a user and I'm a saint.
It's being on YouTube, you have to you have to expect that those kind of comments are going to come your way. We're putting ourselves out there and, it's going to happen. Can you comment on me being a user?
Jessica is not a user at all. This woman will bend over backwards to make everyone else around her happy. She will sacrifice her body and her mental well-being to make sure that others around her are taken care of. Trust me, this woman does not know how to use anyone. It goes against every fiber of her being to be a user of anyone. Trust me, she will do every job herself if she can, and she is reluctant to then ask for help from other people, or even sometimes delegate to other people jobs that should be passed off to other people. She is not a user at all. That's it. That's the end of the period.
I appreciate that. But
now I am a saint, though. They got that part right. I'm so saintly. It's I should be in murals in churches.
What did we decide? I'm the user. You're the saint.
Tess is the martyr.
Tess is the martyr. Some people feel like she has a martyr complex. Apparently. Sorry, Tess. We haven't figured out what Jeff is.
Jeff is Jeff.
He's the safety
officer.
But yes.
There's also
it's just the idea that I'm going to push to get that woman to carry my child is so far from.
She has not done that at all.
It's so far from what their reality is that it just it makes me sad, but it also just is okay, I know that's not true, and I'm just going to ignore that.
I mean, if anything, Tess is the one who just pulls, instead of to have this baby happen. But also, our marriage is great. Okay, yes. We have never been stronger in our relationship. I mean, obviously, we've come through a lot of bad stuff over the last few years,
We've been on a rocky road.
We've been on a rocky road. Our marriage has not been like a rocky road. We are great. We are fantastic in our marriage. We have never been stronger. This woman is the absolute love of my life. I'm nothing is breaking us up at this point. We are cemented together at this point.
Not ice cream, we're cement.
Yeah.
But I think
there is the concrete. You can, ice cream concrete.
Yeah. I think that it's sad that putting out imperfections in our lives would be misconstrued as our marriage being on the rocks. But yeah, we're in a really good place, and we wouldn't be having this conversation about another child if we weren't in a good place.
Yeah,
Trust
absolutely.
me. I want to balance that out, and the last comment that I have saved here is a nice comment. It says, I've been following you guys for a while now, and I'm very impressed by how you've handled things in the past, as well as the self-awareness and critical thinking you've demonstrated time and again. I believe you'll make the best decision for yourselves and your family. And I thought that was a really nice comment to kind of leave it on. I do appreciate that there are a lot of really nice comments that also have come. I know we focused on not negative comments, but just more constructive criticisms and just questions that people have and ways people's minds are reacting or thinking to this. But there have been also a lot of people who have been really supportive, and we do appreciate all of you as well. Mm-hmm. I think there's always a tendency to focus more on the negative than there is on the positive things. So I wanted to leave it on a positive note.
Yes. We love our viewers, even if you criticize us or not. But we do truly appreciate the positive comments that we've gotten and the positive messages that we've gotten, but I can say this, that if you do follow us on social media, the biggest positive comments we always get are whenever we post Elsie pictures and videos, and it like is just a warm glow of joy whenever we post something about her. But is that it?
I think that's it.
It's a long one.
This is a long one, but there is a lot to unpack.
Try to edit it down a bit, but yeah, this one's going to be a long one.
Yeah, we will definitely be sharing more of this journey with you, and we'll see what happens.
Yep. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and click the bell that's right next to it. You'll get notified whenever we post a new video. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram. You can message, you can comment, you can do all that stuff. And like I said earlier on in the video, we absolutely want you guys to send us messages if you have comments, concerns, critiques, whatever it happens to be. As long as you're not mean, we're cool. Like, it's that simple. We expect everybody to be nice and cordial when it comes to comments and messages. And yeah, that's basically that. So I think that's all I got.
That's definitely all I got.
We will see you next time on Crocs in the Kitchen. Bye.